Fall had finally arrived, but I wasn't in the mood to appreciate the crisp air or the changing leaves. Late October carried a loneliness that settled deep in my chest. I was 10 years old, living in a place I hadn't chosen, trying to fit into a life that still felt borrowed. Joyce, the woman now raising me, introduced me everywhere as her adopted daughter, Chirl. Every time she said it, something inside me tightened. I felt less like a child and more like a project. People reacted with smiles that never quite reached their eyes. Their expressions always seemed the same: sympathy for me and admiration for Joyce. "What a wonderful thing you've done," they'd tell her. Then they'd look at me with soft voices and careful smiles, like I might break if handled too roughly. Even at 10, I could feel the difference between kindness and pity. One afternoon, sunlight poured through the classroom windows. Normally, I loved sunny days. But that day, it felt almost cruel, as if the world had forgotten I was hurting. School had become exhausting. I was the only kid who wrote comfortably with both hands, and somehow that made me stand out. Kids whispered and stared. Words like freak floated around me like labels I never asked for. At home, Joyce believed it was something that needed correction. She encouraged me to use only my right hand. At school, kids laughed. At 10 years old, it didn't feel like a talent. It felt like proof that I was different. Different had become a lonely word. Halloween should have felt magical. Instead, I dreaded it. Joyce refused candy and trick-or-treating. Instead, she gave me church Bible tracts to hand out to the children who came knocking at our door. That October evening felt colder than usual. Jack-o'-lanterns glowed across the neighborhood, their carved faces flickering in the darkness, while dry leaves skittered across sidewalks. I stood on the porch clutching pamphlets in my hands. Children arrived dressed as superheroes, witches, and monsters. Some groaned, some laughed, some teased, and some said things children sometimes say without realizing how deeply words can land. Their excitement disappeared the moment they realized I wasn't handing out candy. Their comments followed me long after the porch light switched off. "You're not really part of the family. You were given away." At 10 years old, words like those felt enormous. That night settled over me like a heavy blanket. I remember lying awake wondering if maybe everyone else saw something in me that I couldn't. Something unwanted. Something broken. A few days later, I reached a place inside myself that felt dark and hopeless. I remember wandering through the house in a fog, carrying feelings too big for a 10-year-old to understand. Everything around me felt distant, like I was watching life through thick glass. I didn't know how to explain the hurt I carried, or how badly I wanted the pain to stop. I crept up behind Joyce as she mopped the kitchen floor. Pine sol filled the air. Suddenly, the mop handle swung back and caught me in the stomach. The impact startled me. Joyce asked if I was okay. I told her I was fine. Later, I became sick. Joyce rushed beside me, worried. Looking back now, I realize there were many things I didn't know how to say back then. I didn't know how to describe loneliness, or confusion, or grief. I only knew I hurt. Despite everything, I found unexpected peace at the YMCA. The smell of chlorine greeted me before I even reached the pool deck. Voices echoed off tiled walls, water splashed, and laughter bounced through the room. Woohoo! Something changed whenever I stepped into the water. For once, nobody stared. Nobody tried to fix me. Nobody compared me to anyone else. In the pool, I felt light, free. I finally felt like a puzzle piece that fits. Each stroke carried me somewhere quieter. Swimming became more than an activity. It became a place where I could breathe, a place where I could simply be Shirl. Twice a week, I joined after-school activities, a chance to explore new interests and build connections. The water had given me a new kind of strength, a quiet confidence that was slowly, but surely, helping me navigate the world above the surface. Joyce believed healthy food could solve almost anything. After losing her mother to cancer, food became more than food to her. It became protection, control, maybe even a way of fighting fear. She read labels carefully and avoided anything artificial. Everything in our kitchen felt carefully chosen. Whole wheat bread, alfalfa sprouts, skim milk, meals made from scratch. I understood her reasons years later. Back then, I was 10. All I wanted was a cheeseburger from McDonald's. Every week at school, other kids had a McDonald's hamburger meal for lunch, while I unpacked lunches that made me want to disappear beneath the cafeteria table. Sometimes classmates stared, sometimes they laughed, making me feel like an outcast, a constant observer on the outside looking in. The lunchroom, once a place of fun, had become a battleground. My teacher occasionally bought me lunch, and those small acts of kindness stayed with me longer than she probably realized. Because when you feel different all the time, tiny moments matter. The one thing I absolutely refused to eat was oatmeal. It reminded of the time I tried to give my German Shepherd yogurt, and he threw it up. One morning, my defiance cost me the school bus. Furious, Joyce punished me by making me walk the daunting 3 miles to school. I had no idea how to navigate the route. I followed the bus path but soon found myself lost, my feet growing heavier with each step. Desperate, I asked a kind man mowing his lawn for directions. He drove me the remaining mile and reported the incident to the school. They warned Joyce not to let me walk alone again, given her complicated situation. Her concern was a facade, a knee-jerk reaction to being caught. She had deliberately left me to navigate the unfamiliar streets, a harsh lesson for missing the bus. There was also the Maya family around the corner. Rocky, Chrissy, Allie. Their house felt loud and alive. The adults gathered in the living room while we transformed kitchens and dining rooms into entire worlds. Board games stretched for hours, Monopoly wars, Scrabble battles, clue mysteries. Sometimes our imaginations wandered into spooky territory as we experimented with seances and ghost stories. For a little while, I forgot about fitting in. Kids have a way of creating temporary worlds where loneliness can't always find you. But the questions always lingered. People's curiosity about my adoption was a constant puzzle. Why this family? What were the circumstances? Was it a difficult decision for my biological parents? The questions swirled in my mind, unanswered and haunting. Not everyone felt safe. Joyce's stepfather, Warden, carried a heaviness around him that made rooms feel smaller. I learned early to move carefully when he was nearby. His piercing gaze makes me feel like an outcast. His use of words like "hi, Yella" left me uneasy, even before I fully understood why. It's a term for those with a lighter skin tone, like mine. He often called me Kathy instead of Shirl. Each time felt strange, like my own name kept slipping away. Joyce would gently correct him. He'd shrug, say we looked alike. But every correction left a strange silence behind. At 10 years old, I couldn't understand why it bothered me so much. Now I think maybe children know when people see someone else standing where they are. Today, while Joyce was busy talking to someone, I wandered off to chat with a man sitting on the sidewalk with a sign. He looked like he'd been through a tough time. His hair was disheveled, and his clothes were stained and dirty. But before I could even say hello, Joyce pulled me away quickly. She warned me to stay away, repeating fears and assumptions she'd carried for years. I didn't understand where those fears came from, only that they felt confusing and unfair. Church filled nearly every week of our lives. Sunday services, choir, Bible studies, programs, activities. The church itself felt enormous. Huge rooms, long hallways, libraries filled with books. I loved disappearing into the children's section. Stories became little escape hatches. But even then, I carried questions bigger than anyone seemed prepared for. Questions about God, dinosaurs, pain, why bad things happened, especially to children. Adults didn't always appreciate my curiosity, but questions kept finding me anyway. Asking about my birth parents became another question that never left me. I asked Joyce over and over. Sometimes she'd promise to look. Sometimes she'd avoid the conversation. Then one day she surprised me with a trip to New York. I had never flown before. Suddenly I was above the clouds staring out airplane windows, feeling excitement burst through me. For a while I thought maybe answers were finally waiting. When we arrived at the records building, hope dissolved almost immediately. Fire damage had destroyed what we came to find. I remember staring at the ruins. Smoke stains still scarred the stone like old wounds. Even then, it felt symbolic somehow. Like every road back to my beginning kept disappearing. Later, we visited Los Angeles. On the drive home, Joyce finally told me something. She said I'd been left on Mrs. Green's doorstep as a baby. Her words settled over me quietly. I stared out the car window while freeway lights slid past. Part of me felt devastated. Part of me felt relieved. Because after years of wondering, even painful answers felt better than empty spaces. That night I lay awake imagining impossible things. Maybe my real parents were searching. Maybe they'd come back. Maybe someday someone would explain where I belonged. Music became another refuge. Joyce owned an old ebony Wurlitzer piano. Its history carried sadness, memories, and loss. She had bought it years ago for her niece Kathy. She was a bright, promising girl. Joyce's story takes a dark turn. She reveals that Kathy's husband violently took her life before I was born. Joyce's eyes would tear up as she shared fond memories of Kathy, whose potential was never fully realized. But when I touched the keys, none of that mattered. Music felt different. Music listened. Eventually, piano lessons led me toward another fascination: the flute. Its sound seemed soft and alive, like it floated instead of played. And for once, I wasn't thinking about adoption, or school, or Kathy. I was simply learning something beautiful. A memorable experience was being in the Star News newspaper with Lyra Alite, another student. The article praised the community's work at the Y. We were thrilled to show our creative projects. I proudly wore a leather necklace I made. I wove the threads into an intricate design that told a story. The Y has become a sanctuary for me, a space where I can let my guard down and tap into my artistic side. I'm thrilled to have finally learned to read, and now I'm devouring books. Joyce buys me a new one every week, and we visit the library every 2 weeks, where I borrow as many as I can. One time, while waiting in the bank lobby for my mom to finish talking to a man, I met a lady who was crocheting. She taught me the basics, and I left with a ball of yarn, a hook, and a half-finished chain I started making. I also had a talent for drawing and painting. By the end of 1976, I still didn't know exactly where I fit. I still felt different. Still wondered about my past. Still carried questions bigger than I knew how to hold. But looking back now, I realized something important. Even during the hardest seasons, small pieces of light kept finding me. Swimming pools, books, friends, music, tiny lanterns, and somehow I kept following them. Kathy's name lived everywhere in our house. Photographs, stories, comparisons. Sometimes it felt like I was sharing my life with a ghost. There was even a picture of Kathy on my desk, and she's stunning, with her light skin, reddish hair, and freckles. It's all about Kathy, Kathy, Kathy. I hate this woman I've never met. She was the golden child, the shining star. Her achievements dominated every conversation. Each time my mother praises Kathy, it builds a wall between us. It makes me feel like I can never be good enough. I find myself lost in thought, imagining Kathy's life. I ponder her struggles and triumphs, trying to grasp our unseen bond. The comparisons, though baffling, have sparked a deep desire in me to learn more about this mysterious figure. I hope to find hidden parts of myself in the process. I've always dreamed of belonging, of having parents who love and care for me. But the harsh reality is that I'm an orphan, left to navigate this world alone. Kathy's name seems to cast a shadow over my life. As much as I resent her, I wonder if she holds the key to my identity. I'd bring home an A and hear, Kathy used to get A+. I began wondering who Kathy really was. And slowly another question followed. Who was I? Because the more I heard about Kathy, the harder it became to see myself. Still, even in the middle of confusion, pieces of joy found their way through. Books, music, swimming, crafts at the Y. Small moments kept appearing like tiny lanterns along a dark road, and without realizing it, I kept following them. Joyce took me to a high-end beauty salon. It was filled with the hum of hairdryers and the chatter of stylists. She wanted to get my waist-length curls pampered. The stylist, with a keen eye for detail, was eager to take on the challenge of taming my unruly mane. She spent over 4 hours tenderly combing, cutting, and styling my hair. Her hands moved with precision as she worked to create a masterpiece. However, when she finally finished, she politely asked Joyce not to bring me back, citing the time-consuming nature of my hair. On the drive home, Joyce vented her frustration. She recounted the stylist's blunt words and criticized her lack of skill. That night, I took matters into my own hands. I reached for the scissors and cut off each ponytail. The satisfying snip of the blades was a symbol of my defiance. Tiny curls covered the floor around my chair like pieces of myself falling away. When Joyce saw my new choppy hairstyle, she turned beet red with rage. I could almost see steam rising from her head. But I stayed unfazed. I knew she'd complain no matter what.